you have time for electives. Now, instead of studying random electives across the institution, not that anyone ever studies them randomly actually, you substitute 3.5 credits of study with the teacher education stream program courses. So in your first year, you will do 2 classes in education. In your second year, you will do 2 classes in education. In your third year, you'll do 1 class in education, and we'll come back to that. And in your fourth year, you'll do 2 classes in education. The classes are composed of half your time in the university, in class, studying, and half of the time in voluntary placements that you can, I think there's another question about that coming up later, so I'll try not to say too much about that, but self-organized volunteer placements in anywhere where education takes place. So every year you'll study education, but it is alongside your degree. The reason we have 1 course, I must remember this, 1 course in the third year, is that if you choose to take part in the study abroad program in your third year, which Trent also participates in, and it's a wonderful opportunity to go and study internationally. If you choose to do that, then you're exempt from taking that third year course. That third year course is focused on issues of language and literacy, and so we thought it was a great opportunity to substitute that one when you're working internationally, even if you're in a country where they speak English. So certainly from a cultural perspective, there's a lot of difference, and so we thought it was a great one to substitute. So 3.5 credits of education spread over the 4 years of study alongside your major. It isn't a major or a minor, so it isn't a degree program. However, it is notated on your transcript. So when you graduate, going back to those 2 first examples, you'll have like BA History or BSc Mathematics, and on your transcript it will also say Teacher Education Stream Program. So I hope that's clarified what that is, and we can always come back with more questions later if needs be. Thanks.
It does. That was wonderful. And I guess building off of that, I'll ask you, Adrian, what degrees can students take under the teacher education stream?
All right, so as Claire was alluding to, I mean, you've got a great deal of flexibility in terms of like what what the area might be of your your main degree, if you will. Again, you're excuse me, you're doing the education component on top of it. But the core degree that, it could be history, it could be mathematics, it could be in the sciences, it could be psychology, and so on. So you've got a great deal of flexibility to study in areas that are of interest to you, areas that you're passionate about and keen to investigate more. I guess the key thing that, a lot of times we're asked the question, what would be most useful to support my later teaching? And I think just a couple angles there to consider. No matter what the main degree is in, I always encourage people that if you're working towards, knowing that you're going to become a teacher, try to keep that diversity of experience in the back of your mind. So you're taking undergraduate courses. If you're more generally a liberal arts kind of person, then force yourself to try to reach over to something in the sciences or the mathematics areas. And the flip side would be true as well. Try to take some content to make yourself as diverse as possible, so that you're bringing a wider experience into the classroom later on. The other thing to keep in mind as well is that if you're working towards becoming an intermediate senior teacher, if you're keen to teach at grade 7 to 12 levels, then for those areas, you will eventually be identified as having 2 teaching subjects that are your principal teaching subjects that you're going to have your certification in eventually. So for those 2 areas, your undergraduate degree will logically have both of those areas as a key component. Your first teaching subject, you'll need 5 credits in that area, and your second teaching subject will need normally 3, or if it's in French, then 4 credits in that area. So because of those credits, it's just important to think that it would be logical, if you're an intermediate senior person, that your main degree will probably be in one of those two teaching subjects with some electives in the other area. If you're working towards primary junior teaching, kindergarten to grade 6, then you've got a little bit more flexibility. Some people like to do that degree in psychology or sociology, but that's not necessarily the case. We also need we need specialists who have a really strong background in science in the elementary division, or mathematics, or whatever that might be. So again, don't be confined by what it should be. Just try to stay open to keeping that well-rounded foundation approach. But like I say, for the intermediate senior people, then you do have to be a little bit more focused to be sure that you've got enough credits in your 2 teaching subjects.
Thanks, Adrian. It sounds like students have a lot of flexibility, but also choice here at Trent, which is wonderful because we let students, expand their perspective so that when they teach, it sounds like they're taking what they learned and bringing it into the perspectives of their students.
Exactly.
Okay, my next question is for Kathleen. What are the requirements for admission into the teacher education stream?
Yeah, so for those who are applying straight from high school, which is probably the bulk of our applicants to the teacher education stream, we're going to look at your top 6 4U or 4M courses. That's how we're going to calculate your average. And we're looking for 75% or higher. The higher the average, the earlier you're probably going to hear from us, because we send our offers on a rolling basis. So we kind of start at the higher range and work towards that minimum of 75%. So we're looking for 75 and higher. We can use some of your grade 11 courses for an early offer. So I know some students are wondering sort of when is the earliest they might hear from Trent. We actually start in mid-November when we start getting grades. So it is possible to get an early offer, and that offer would be conditional upon satisfying the requirements that we have published. And we're also looking for a minimum of 60% in English. That's pretty standard across the board for Trent, for our undergraduate courses. And that's a 4U English. And if you are wanting to do the teacher education stream science, so if you're going to pursue a science degree at Trent, it's recommended that you have a 4U math, because you are going to have to take university level math. So we want to make sure that you're prepared and that you feel comfortable with math, which Claire would say everybody should take a 4U math. You should all feel comfortable and prepared with math, but it's only that sort of requirement for the science stream.
Great. And I guess I'm curious, are students in the teacher education stream guaranteed entry to Trent's Bachelor of Education program?
That's a great question. So no is the general, but we do have some spaces reserved for our teacher education stream students. So the Bachelor's of Education is the professional program. It's a 2-year 4-semester program that's required for anyone who wants to become a registered teacher in Ontario. And all of the BEd programs across Ontario, we have a limited number of seats. So it is competitive, and our program, because it is a consecutive, it is not a concurrent, students do need to apply to the program, even if they're in the teacher education stream. So we do have some seats reserved for students coming from Trent from the teacher education stream if they have an 85% at the time they're applying, which is based on their last 10 full credits when they apply. If they have an 85%, they're guaranteed admission. But I will say 85% is a bit of a scary average to be thinking about. The minimum average for students to apply to the Bachelor of Education, so this is looking at your university grades, not your high school grades anymore, the minimum is 70%. So because our application to the Bachelor's of Education is based on both academics and experience, we see a full range of averages be admitted to the program. And a lot of our teacher education stream students are admitted and given an offer. Not everyone's going to accept it. By that point, you might decide, you want to move closer to an area that you plan to work, and you want to make sure you get placements in that board. Maybe you want to do your full 6 with Trent. We're happy to have you, but at that point, there is a lot more movement for the Bachelor's of Education. So there is some reserved seats, but it isn't concurrent. It is a consecutive, so students do apply to it.
Are you able to expand briefly, Kathleen, on what the difference between consecutive and concurrent is, just for the folks tuning in?
Sure, yeah, and I noticed earlier there was at least one question about that. So a concurrent program means you're locked into both your undergraduate and your Bachelor's of Education at the same institution. Typically, it means that while you're pursuing your undergraduate degree, you'll actually take courses that are a part of a Bachelor's of Education along the way. So two programs are kind of running simultaneously. In terms of the duration of the programs, you are still completing the exact equivalent of what our program is. So ours is a 4+2, so it's 6 years. Most concurrent programs are 6 years at the least. They might be 5 years, but that would require you to take courses sort of in between session, like in the summer, to stay on that track, because you're completing 2 degrees at the same time. So that's a concurrent program, and a consecutive is what we offer. It's your undergraduate first, and then the Bachelor's of Education. And the reason we recommend this stream, and the whole reason it was created, is because we want students who feel pretty confident that they're going to go into teaching to have the opportunity to learn about education and to get that foundational knowledge and experience, so that by the time they get to that final year, they're going to be pretty sure. Maybe they've decided they love education, but they don't want to be a teacher in a classroom, so they can pursue something else. And similarly, it might be the 100% experience they needed to be sure they were going to go into teaching. So it goes both ways. So we want all students who are interested to have the experience of the teacher education stream, knowing not everyone is going to stick with it, but at least they'll have that sort of exposure. And the courses they're taking are undergraduate level. So they still count towards their degree, even if they change their mind in their final year and don't want to go to teaching. Like, they're still getting their degree and they're still getting that emphasis.
Perfect. Thank you, Kathleen. And I really love how you talked about the experiences and that confidence of students, which kind of leads into my next question for you, Rich. What are the experiential learning opportunities and placement opportunities available within the teacher education stream? Will students get that real world in classroom experience?
Yes, they will. And I'll elaborate on that once. Claire, you have something to add to the last point. I'll let you jump in.
Sorry, Gillian. I just wanted to follow up on the consecutive concurrent piece, because we do have a concurrent program as well. It's a much smaller program, but we have a concurrent Bachelor of Education program for self-identified Indigenous students. So if you're a self-identified Indigenous student, we do have a concurrent program that you can go directly into from high school, or you can transfer into at other points. So it's not that we don't have a concurrent program, but we have a very specific Indigenous concurrent program. So for non-Indigenous students, teacher education stream, consecutive BEd. For Indigenous students, if they so choose, there's no requirement if you're an Indigenous student to do the Indigenous BEd concurrently. However, that is another option that's open to you. So I didn't want to lose sight of that in all of our talk about the teacher education stream. Thanks. Sorry, Rich.
Hey, that's okay. That's a very key program. So yes, there are placement opportunities in the teacher education stream. By nature, education courses and moving into your BEd are very hands-on courses. There are some of the few hands-on courses you might experience throughout your undergraduate degree. And you'll notice as you go throughout the years, your classrooms get a little bit smaller, and those opportunities for hands-on in the class are happening a lot of the time. Now, outside of the classroom, there are placements. So each year you are expected to fulfill around 36 hours throughout that year of placement opportunities. And that, again, to Jillian's point earlier, and there's flexibility in what those placements would be. We do have partnered school boards in the areas in Durham and Peterborough that many of our students jump into. So, that you can certainly go into a classroom and have that experience, and that's something that you would coordinate with yourself, but with the support of your instructor and making sure that you are in an educational setting. And to that point, there are people who might be doing placements in for child and youth studies and are able to extend that into a placement that could feed into hours into the teacher education stream. Or you might be a part of a team coaching, and there's some volunteer hours that you want to continue on and work that out. There's a lot of flexibility that you can go into different areas, and you'll find that throughout education, you'll meet people doing different things in education outside of the classroom. And we certainly promote that if we can throughout the years in the program too, because like Kathleen's also talked about, you might find out that teaching is not for you. And so, but you might see other places in education outside of the classroom that really resonate with you. And so there are opportunities there throughout your undergraduate years in the TES to take those placements. And then further to that, once you do, if you do choose to get into our Bachelor of Education program, again, there are further opportunities for you do placements in schools where you will be teaching. That is part of the program. But there's also what we call the alternative settings placement, which is actually part of a requirement that we have that pushes you to do something outside of the classroom. And so that's a key piece. And I know that Jack and Claire can definitely maybe mention, at their when they speak, maybe what they did, if that's helpful to anyone. But yes, lots of opportunity for hands-on.
Perfect, thank you. And I guess that leads into my next question of, again, the experiences and finding if that's the right fit for you. Adrian, what types of courses will students take in the teacher education stream? And I guess what are the career prospects like for teachers right now?
Okay, so yeah, two very different questions there. So I'll take one, then the other. So the question about the courses. So just here, I'll be speaking about the 3.5 credits that are within the education education portion of the teacher education stream program. So, as we alluded to before, you've got the rest of your degree, and that's going to be in the area that you choose for it to be in. But the education, the half credit per semester that you do within education during your undergraduate, during your teacher education stream program, that will be for the first 2 years. The courses are more general and give you a fairly broad perspective on introduction to teaching concepts and ways of thinking about teaching, and developing the early development of who you are as a teacher person in the classroom or beyond. And then as the program moves on, it becomes more refined, more specific. You have an introduction to literacy, considerations related to literacy within education. And sometimes people hear that and say, well, I'm not really interested in teaching literacy. Well, actually, as teachers, we are all teachers of literacy, and those are there are key elements within that field that we need to all be aware of, no matter what we're teaching within our own classroom in education. And then there's also in your 4th year, we have an introduction to topics in math education, as well as STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and I'm missing one. Help her.
No, of course.
No. Sorry about that. Your area. I knew I would mess up if I didn't have the acronym written out in my hand in front of me. So those 2 areas, both, they really, again, just like literacy in the 3rd year, they help to give you a bit more depth in specific areas and areas that, again, you might say, well, I'm not thinking about myself as a teacher in those areas, but it's important for every teacher to have those perspectives and that context and that outlook for what they would bring into the classroom. So the second part of the question then related to career opportunities. If at some point you're talking to somebody that has information that might be a little bit outdated from 5 or 6 years ago, you might still hear some people referring to the idea, well, there aren't a lot of jobs in teaching, are there? Whereas that actually in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been quite a change in the teaching field. And there's a much better outlook, if you will, for teaching opportunities these days. Obviously, with the pandemic, the different boards are, they have to refine their hiring policies right now, and they're dealing with challenges in terms of what that might actually look like. But our graduates are getting positions. Our graduates are getting opportunities. Usually, to start with, those are going to be opportunities that might be long-term occasional or substitute teaching opportunities. But once upon a time, you had to spend many years doing that before you were going to get some permanent opportunities, whereas that's not the case that we're hearing from most of our graduates now. Most of them are moving on toward permanent contracts fairly quickly. Again, nothing is a guarantee, but that tends to be right now. School boards are needing teachers, and needing teachers quite badly. And I think we should also note, though, that thinking about just the traditional classroom might be also, for some people, a little bit limiting, because there are opportunities that beyond that. That your teacher education stream experience might be something that gives you a spark of interest in something that may not be that traditional classroom. Maybe you decide to move on instead, for example, to a master's in education, and maybe going a research direction, or maybe applying your education experience in a different field or an NGO, or there are different pathways that you might take. And I think one of the beautiful things about teacher education stream program is it's not limiting. As you mentioned a couple times, you get that exposure to opportunities that might take you in a different direction, and that's totally fine. It's a great way to go.
Perfect. Thank you, Adrian. My next question is for Claire. Is the teacher education stream available at both Trent Durham and Peterborough? And what are the advantages of studying at both campuses?
Well, the short answer is yes, it's available on both campuses, and then it gets into the longer answer about both of our campuses. So traditionally, probably a few years ago, if people were thinking of the Trent Durham campus, they might have thought of it as a commuter campus because there was no residence available there. However, the reality is last year we opened a really lovely new residence building on the Durham campus. And so therefore now both campuses have the opportunity for you to live and study at their campus. Equally, you can travel and be a day student on either campus. Both campuses have got a range of different courses and programs available. Some are available on both campuses, but some are campus specific. So you need to have a look and see. Child and Youth Studies is available on the Durham campus, not on the Peterborough campus. Some of the sciences are only available on the Peterborough campus where the labs are. So have a look at the courses that you're interested in, and that will probably decide which direction you want to go. However, having said that, you're not committed to one campus. When you apply to Trent, you're a Trent student. So maybe you're on the Durham campus doing child and youth studies, and you do a bit of biology, and for example, just as minor, and I was thinking of a piece that you might be able to get some courses online, but where some, to finish off, you might need to have a course that isn't available in Durham. There's nothing at all to stop you saying, well, one day a week I'm going to go to Peterborough and do the courses that I need to do there. So you're not committed to one campus or the other. Both campuses have got a range of great programs. The Durham campus is far more urban, with great links into the city. Peterborough is more rural, beautiful river running through the campus, surrounded by greenery. Having said that, great links to the downtown, and also great links from this campus back down to the GTA as well. So both campuses are wonderful places to study. I think the bigger question is going to be for people to ask themselves, what is it I want to study and where do I find that? Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Claire. Again, that flexibility piece, and that's great that we're able to give students that option. My next question is for you, Kathleen. It's a hard question. Who should students contact if they want to learn more about the teacher education stream?
Yeah, so probably me. I'd say I get most of those questions. So if you just have general questions about you're setting up your account or anything like that, you can just use the connect with us email on the website, which is just discover Trent U. But my email is educationadmissions@trentu.ca, all one word, all lowercase. And if you have some specific questions or are just needing more clarification about how to do a specific thing in education and what the best route is, I'm happy to help you.
Perfect. Thank you. And I see lots of questions coming in the chat too, so that's amazing. And my last two questions are for our current students in the program. Jack or Claire, what do you love most about studying in the teacher education stream? So one of you can tackle that.
So after being in my third year now in education, my favorite thing has been the sense of community that the stream has provided. I've always had such a passion for teaching. And so when I entered into Trent and into the stream, even just my first class, walking in and having Claire Mooney actually as my professor, it was super refreshing having being surrounded by everyone that all has the same passion as you. So that's really a big difference from high school to university, because you're able to focus on what you're really passionate about and be surrounded by other people that are also learning at the same time as you. So yeah.
Amazing. Jack, did you want to add into that one at all?
I think Claire got most of it. It's really, you get to build a sense of community among people who have the same interests as you in a lot of cases. And those friends you make and the connections you make stay with you as you go through the school. Like I still talk to professors I had back in first year, and I haven't seen them in a couple of years, but I just had coffee with one the other day for 3 hours and we caught up to chat. So just building those relationships and that sense of community is a really big part of it.
Amazing. And that's amazing. You're able to go for coffee with your professors. That is, I think, the Trent experience right there. And then one last question for you, Claire and Jack. This one I think is a tough one, but also very easy because it seems like you are both enthusiastic ambassadors of the education program. Why did you choose Trent?
I can go first, Jack, if that's okay. I just felt like it was a super easy decision for myself. My sister actually went to Trent, so that was also a connection I made. It's super close to home. And I've had teachers in the past that have actually done their undergrad with Trent for teaching and then done their B.Ed at teaching. So it just kind of made so many connections that just fit right in. And of course, when I toured campus, I fell in love because it's just so amazing and beautiful. And I just couldn't not choose Trent.
I kind of had the opposite experience of Claire. Before actually the open house in grade 12, I'd never heard of Trent before. So for me, I got introduced to it at the open house at my school actually, and then I decided to come up and take a tour, and like Claire said, I just fell in love with the campus, and I got to meet some professors in the program, and especially for me, having smaller class sizes was a huge advantage. Being able to actually make a connection with your professor and the people in your class. For most cases, you're not in a class where there's 600, 700 students. They're very small, and even your seminar groups are even smaller than that. And then the program, just having practical experience, like being able to go out and actually experience what it's like to be a teacher, or at least get an idea. Those were really big draws for me to the program.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you. You went from not knowing Trent to being on the panel and being a great student in the program, endorsing it. That's wonderful. Well, I'm cognizant of time here. And we have reached the end. It looks like we had so many questions in the chat, which was wonderful. And we had some staff in the back answering those questions. But Kathleen, if you wanted to one more repeat the contact information just for students that may have questions after.
For sure. Yeah, it's just education admissions at trentu.ca. If you're touring the website though, and you do find another email, like a general one, don't worry, it'll find its way to me. So you can also use that Discover Trent email that's just on the Connect With Us page. And as Jillian has mentioned a few times, and the students both referenced, we do have tours ongoing as well. So I'd say that's also a really great way to get your questions answered is if you can make it to campus, do the tour, check in with our enrollment advisors. And again, they can always refer you to me if it's something that I can help you with.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So it looks like we've reached the end, and I would like to thank everyone on the panel, Claire, Adrian, Rich, Kathleen, Jack, and Claire. Thank you again for your time today and showing us how enthusiastic you are about Trent and the School of Education. This session was recorded, and so it will be posted on the fall preview webpage. So if you would like to rewatch it or would like to share it with anyone else, they can refer to it as well. And like Kathleen said, I would encourage you to come and visit our campuses. We are hosting in-person tours Monday through Saturday, and the link for tours will be posted in the chat there, trentu.ca/tours. And I also would like to invite you to our open house November the 20th, which again, you'll see the wonderful faces of the people here and learn more about programs and Trent. We look forward to connecting with all of you and answering any questions you may have. But for now, thank you for joining our session, and I hope to hear from you soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.